finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to As a finance professional in a disrupted business landscape, what does it take to be in demand? What does it take to attract great paying international roles? If you're an ICAN member, it'll just take one exam. That's all it takes to complete the globally recognized CIMA professional qualification and the internationally respected CGMA designation. As a CIMA member and a CGMA designation holder, employers will look at you as a finance professional, constantly acquiring new skills to add value to the business. That's why they'll be willing to pay premium to hire and retain you. If you have 5 years of relevant experience and are an ICAN member, you can directly sit for the final exam of the CIMA Professional Qualification, the Strategic Case Study Exam. Start studying the CIMA Professional Qualification. Prepare to make an impact.
Good evening, professional colleagues. Good evening, friends of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Our students, we want to welcome you. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great day to have another session of ICAN on Air. I'm sure several people will be watching across the globe. Today is the celebration of love, and the anchor has decided to come in the color of love, which is red. We painted the atmosphere red, and after the scene, we go live and bubble. Let me wish every one of us happy Valentine from the 58th president, the board member of the ICAN on Air, and the governing council of our institute. We have come again in our usual tradition to educate us and impact our knowledge. And today, we will be talking about the professional accountant in court. Somebody is amazed. What will a professional accountant be doing in the court? Yes, providing evidence in forensic cases, the finance perspective. And to do justice to this is a man that is vast in this forensic of a thing, Mr. Richard Ebuetse, who is an award-winning certified fraud examiner, a certified forensic investigation professional, and a fellow of our great institute, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. His experience spanned across industries such as FMCG, finance services, consulting, NGO, donor fund agency, oil and gas, telecom, shipping, mining, public sector in over 15 nations across Africa and Europe. He has an extensive experience in the following area: forensic and fraud investigation, corporate compliance review and investigation, anti-robbery corruption review and investigation from UK, and ethic and compliance management, training and manpower development. He has led the team to undertake engagement in Nigeria, United Kingdom, Mauritius, Ghana, Uganda, Zimbabwe, to mention but just a few. Worked in a key law enforcement agency in Nigeria for over a decade. He has also worked in the forensic department of the Big Four, where he rose to the post of associate director before leaving. He is presently the head of Code of Business Conduct and Compliance function in a leading multinational in Nigeria. For the past 10 years, he is a key resource person in forensic accounting certification program are organized by our great institute. I can tell you that we brought before you this evening an in-depth person that will be talking to us about the professional accountant in the court and what we will be doing, providing evidence in forensic cases, the finance perspective. Don't let me let the cat out of the bag. There's definitely another recap of this particular program, but another perspective. Like I keep telling you, this is a platform that you need to project yourself, and we will continue to welcome your goods and services. Before I bring in my guest, let me quickly go on a very short break, and when I come back, we'll come in with the guest, and we will do justice to the topic of today. Please stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. I have my guest with me this evening, Mr. Richard Ebuetse. We seems to be having a call back from the other side. Can you hear me very well, Richard? Okay, please unmute and let our audience hear you.
So thank you very much, everyone. Apologies, just trying to switch devices. Let me fix my earpiece on this one.
Okay, so we can hear you loud and clear, and you can hear me. So we will be talking together today on the professional accountant in the court. What will a professional accountant be doing in court? Providing evidence in forensic cases. We want to look at it from the finance perspective. Let me start this way, Richard. As professional accountant, one of our core areas of endeavor is forensic services, an integral part of auditing and investigation. This area of accounting sometimes require accountants to stand as witnesses in the law court, even though we did not train as lawyers. Our global audience are itching to draw from your knowledge of experience. Let's start this way. What is forensic service and who qualifies to be called a forensic expert?
Thank you very much for having me. Once my apologies for the network issues. So forensic service, first of all, the word forensic. Forensic is an English word which simply means for something to be suitable for the court of law. So forensic services is making reference to when a service is offered and the output of that service is admissible or can be presented in a court of law. In the context of our discussion today, the forensic accountant, forensic services would mean when an accountant does his services and then the outcome of that services is in a state and in a nature that it can be presented and acceptable in a court of law. You and I know that when something is to be presented in a court of law, it's either there is a dispute or there is something to be proven or unproven. Perhaps there's a misconduct or a criminal activity somewhere. So the forensic services, talks about when the accountant does his work, whether it be auditing or investigation, and then the work covers an area of misconduct or criminal activity, and then the output of that work must be in such a state that it can be presented and acceptable in a court of law. To your next question, who qualifies to be a forensic expert? So there are a couple of things that we need to have in place before we can call ourselves forensic expert. First of all, is education. Education alone does not suffice. That someone has, for example, a bachelor's degree in accounting doesn't make him a forensic expert. Apart from certification, there has to be a training and a certification process. It's a good thing that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria has such a process in place where forensic accountants are trained and certified. I've been one of the facilitators of that for almost 10 years now. People go through that training. A set of courses are drawn up, including investigation, law, forensics, and all, what needs to be learned. And in the end, a certification program is done and certificates are issued. And then when that person gets relevant experience, he qualifies for someone you could call a forensic expert. So you need education, you need training, and you need certification and then experience. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what a great way to start the show this evening, giving us an insight into what forensic service is all about, and those that qualify to be called a financial expert. And you just said it, that our institute is grooming, and we continue to groom financial expert with the education, the qualification we have, the certification, and continuous training that will make us to be. While I proceed, Richard, forensics seems to be an offshoot of auditing and investigation. Please educate our global audience. What are the major differences between forensic services and audit and investigation services?
Okay, so this is a recurring question that comes again and again, and it's a very apt question. Yes. Before I try to differentiate there, let me just say that at times they overlap. You can be doing one and then you veer into the other. So let me start with auditing. And now auditing is when a qualified accountant examines a financial statement prepared by the management of an entity in order to give an opinion to the shareholders or the owners of the entity, whether that financial statement shows a true and fair view of the state of affairs of the business. And it's a statutory requirement in most countries of the world, Nigeria inclusive. So where certain companies are under obligation to present audited financial statement before the shareholders. So that's what auditing is. Now for investigation, the word investigation is an inquiry. You are trying to find out something that happened. It's a broad term. You have investigative journalism, for example, where a journalist goes to, probe and find out a couple of things that have happened. You have investigative medical, activities where a doctor begins to, like autopsy, for example, to check what was the cause of death. Now, in our context, when you say investigation, it talks about the services a professional accountant does to be able to unravel what happened in a transaction, in a financial transaction. How the funds went, who was involved in misconduct, who diverted funds. Now, investigation can happen, and then it would not be intended to end in a court of law. Now, but where that investigation is done, and the intention is that the output of that investigation would be in a state that it can be presented in a court of law, you've entered the area of forensic. So forensic accounting or forensic investigation is doing an investigation with the intention that the output will be suitable and presentable in a state that will be admissible in a court of law. So like I said, there can be overlaps, but these are the clear distinctions between the three.
They can be overlapped, but there's one salient point that you've given, the background of getting to forensic. You said it starts from auditing. Even if they are going to be overlapping, who carries out audits? You said something that is very germane. And I want to believe that my audience are hearing it. It must be by a qualified accountant. So that is the fundamental. that I want to bring out of this when we are distincting. So you don't pick forensic from the top. It starts from beneath, going to investigation. And when that thing is to be admissible in the court of law, then you're already entering into forensic. Richard, in fact, you are a good lecturer, and I want to believe that my audience are benefiting key from that. Can you quickly run us through the key functions of a forensic accountant?
So a forensic accountant has a lot of function it does. So basically, all of it is bordered around inquiry. So it covers different areas. It can be in the area of taxation. You want to check what and what went wrong. It can be in the area of forensic audit, for example. So forensic audit is doing auditing, not just for the statutory requirement, but going beyond to see what is wrong and what went wrong in the course of the transaction. It can be accounting services. It can be payroll services. So whatever function the accountant is meant to perform, when it is taken beyond the ordinary, if you like, basic requirement, it goes into inquiry. It goes into bringing out an output that will be suitable to the court of law. So you can say that service has now entered the realm of forensic services. So forensic services covers everything the accountant does, whether it be auditing, taxation services, solvency, everything the accountant does, but with a tinge of inquiry on it to find out what went wrong, who did what, and then come out with outputs that you can present in a court of law that will be admissible.
Richard, as an experienced forensic accountant, at least I picked that from your profile. Can you please give us a couple of key considerations that a professional accountant, because from here we can see there's distinction between a professional accountant and a forensic accountant. So what are the key considerations that a professional accountant should keep in mind while he's undertaking forensic services?
Okay, so this is very important, and of course, expectedly, we can't cover everything within these few minutes that we have, but I'll just highlight a couple of things. Now, I say this from the wealth of experience. I've done forensic services in over 15 countries in Africa and in Europe. Different considerations apply to different countries. So the first thing I would advise anyone who wants to undertake forensic services, be mindful of the legal framework within which you operate. Not everything is acceptable in every jurisdiction. And I will give you an example. I once attended a training one time in Europe that had representative of in Africa and in Europe. We were discussing interviews during investigation. And I let them know that in Nigeria, you cannot record an interview without the consent of the interviewee. That is what our law requires. And the law of evidence clearly states that. I was surprised when one of the participants, I think from South Africa, said no, that in their country, once any of the party whose voice is in the recording is ready and willing for that to be recorded, it can be recorded. So that means if I am interviewing Mr. Kuno Adena, for example, Mr. Kuno Adena does not need to know I'm recording the interview, provided I am willing and ready to record it. So, but that would not work in Nigeria. So you need to be mindful of the legal framework and jurisdiction under which you are performing an investigation. That's the first thing you need to be mindful of. Secondly, you need to be litigation-minded from the beginning. When you're doing a forensic service, right from the beginning, have it in mind that this will end up in a court of law. So when you have that in mind, it directs you on what you do. So for example, there is something called chain of custody of evidence. It means every evidence you obtain, you maintain a chain of custody, because without a chain of custody, evidence is inadmissible in a forensic investigation. So you do an investigation that mindset. And then one more thing you need to take into cognizance is keep in mind that you are not a judge. Each time I train people, I normally ask this question. At what point in an investigation can a forensic accountant write in the report that somebody has committed fraud? And I hear responses from different people, which is surprising. Now, at no point in time, for example, at no point in time can a forensic auditor write in the report that somebody has committed fraud. Only the court of law can pronounce somebody that has committed fraud. We as forensic accountant can only gather facts, present the fact, and then when it gets to court, it's the work of the judge to say Mr. A has committed fraud. Writing that statement in a report can nullify the work the forensic, accountant has done. So these are a few considerations that somebody should keep in mind. On a final note on that one, there is what is called the principle of natural justice. That principle specifies that when you're doing an investigation, you must be fair, unbiased, and professional. For example, you must give people the right to respond to everything you have found against them. So if you have found that Mr. A, diverted a couple of funds from a company, you don't conceal that and put it in your report. The principle of natural justice is you must present Mr. A with that adverse finding and then give him the opportunity to respond to that. So these are just some considerations that a forensic accountant needs to keep in mind when he's doing a forensic accounting services.
Very deep and very, very deep. One needs to understand the legal framework of the jurisdiction. Is very key, even before you consider the other three things that you have highlighted. I proceed, Richard, to know how is this financial forensic investigation, how is it carried out? Are there special procedure involved, or what type of evidence could be sought during the investigation?
Okay, so there is an approach to conducting forensic investigation, forensic services. Of course, the approach is not cast in stone, but we can just give a high-level overview. You start by, first of all, understanding what is a concern. Forensic services are not just carried out of the blues. Okay, like audit that is statutorily required. Forensic services is not something statutorily required. Somebody needs to call you in to say, come do this. Now you need to understand the concern of the person. That is where to start, the mandate. And then you scope your work. You scope your work in the sense that this is what I am setting out to find out. I want to ascertain who are those that were involved in rigging the bid to engage this vendor. We want to find out who have been involved in mismanaging the company fund. So you set your scope. And then you go to check the regulatory framework that surrounds that particular transaction, policies, procedure. You do all this, and then you begin to look at transactional records. And I know I'm a little bit fast, but just because of time, you begin to look at transactional records, vouchers, receipts, emails, things that would give you an idea of who you need to be speaking to. Now, like I tell people, when you do forensic services, forensic investigation, do not just jump and start interviewing people. You make a mess of the whole thing. You need to gather your fact by looking at documents, looking at policies, and then you make a list of the persons you want to speak to. And then you go into interview. Now, investigative interview is a different course entirely. We cannot cover that in this session. You need to be trained on how to conduct interview. There is a sequence in interviewing. So, for example, you interview someone who will tell you about the process first. Then you go to interviewing somebody who witnessed the misconduct next. And then you go to interview somebody who perhaps cooperated with the suspected culprit. The person who is under the searchlight must be the last person you interview. Because the essence of it is that you want to gather enough evidence, enough fact before you come to him. Because the purpose of investigative interview is to gain an admission from the culprit. So if you are able to present fact before the person, this is what we have found. Can you respond to this? We saw ABC. Can you please let us know? So this is why the person who is a suspected culprit should be the very last person you interview in an interviewing process. And so the evidence you asked of, the evidence can come in paper form, electronic evidence, and the evidence can come in people making statements. There are places for people who make statement of what they saw. And there are ways, again, to document people's statement. Again, that cannot be covered in this session. You don't just give people paper to write like the police, do. No. You need to interview someone, and then they need to write the statement in a particular way that would bring out what is being, sought after. And then you need to read it back to them. They need to append their signature for them to say, yes, this is a voluntary statement from me. So all these will go into what you have asked about evidence in, forensic investigation.
Sincerely speaking, forensic accountant is not meant for the boys. It's meant for those that have the patience and are deep. And this will take me to this question before I open the lifeline for my audience to ask the question. Going through all these that you have said and the circumstances revolving around financial accounting, which centers around you trying to pick out something that is admissible at the court of law. How dangerous will you consider this service to be?
Okay. I'm not trying to scare anyone. Yeah, so yeah, but you need to keep in mind.
That's why I need to ask, because those things you've highlighted us, from interviewing the process to the person who live, and I just need to ask you how, because you've been there for years. How dangerous?
Okay.
You are not scaring us, but let's see whether we have a thick skin like you.
Okay, so yeah, it goes without saying, as a forensic accountant, you're trying to find out something that somebody has done wrong. And that person will not leave the evidence on the table. It will conceal it. It will try to hide it. Your work as a professional accountant, a forensic accountant, is to find out what the person is trying to hide. In all trainings of fraud examiners, forensic investigators, for example, I am a certified fraud examiner from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in the USA. One of the things you are told is that forensic services is an adversarial service. You are told upfront. It's an adversarial service, yes, because nobody likes to be investigated. That's the summary of it. But so, is it dangerous? I leave that to the audience to judge. You're looking for a matter that somebody who has done wrong is trying to conceal, and that person knows very well that when you find out what you're looking for, he may lose his job or you may go to jail. It will not be happy for you to find that out. So, but I want to put a rider to that. You, as a forensic accountant, there are certain things you can do to help yourself and not unnecessarily expose yourself. I'll just touch on two. Number one, professionalism. You must be professional in discharging your duties. Do not be emotional. Do not be sentimental. You must be professional. So, and for example, when you're speaking to people, you let people know that you are not after them as a person, you are after transaction and record. So let me give an example. So if I say, Mr. Kunwa, they are finding out that you took 5 million naira from the company's account without approval. Can you tell me why you took this money? What did you do with this money? We've not been able to see this money. This is nothing more than fraud. Now, if I speak to you that way, it gives you the impression that Richard is coming after me as a person, which is not a professional way to conduct the job. But if I say, Mr. Kunwa, we're looking through some transactions and we have not been able to see the approvals that was given for a certain amount that you withdrew. Can you please help us check where it was approved and let us have the approval of that payment so that we can close it out? In all these things, I've not talked to you as a person. I've simply directed your focus to document I am looking at. Now, it may still end up that you may not be able to provide any approval, which will still make it an observation. But I've taken the focus away from you towards records. So this is one thing that helps you to stay in the safe side when you're doing forensic investigation. And then the second thing is the principle of natural justice is very important. You must be unbiased, you must be fair, and you must give people fair hearing. It is always dangerous and unprofessional to have an observation in a forensic investigation and then you keep it away from the person it impacts. That's not professional. You must give people the avenue to know what you have found against them and then give them the opportunity to respond. I believe these two main things and then some other considerations that you put in place would keep you in the clear if you do your work professionally.
Oh, that will actually put you in the clear, being professional and putting the natural justice, which is fairness, unbiased, and fair hearing to the person that you're investigating. To our audience, I've been guesting Mr. Richard Ebuetse, who are a member of our institute, a forensic expert with over 15 years experience across Africa and Europe. And let me quickly welcome a question from the audience. It gives me great pleasure to read the question of Fagbola Temitope, all the way from the Asian city in Ibadan. My producer, okay, he's asking that what critical role does the Nigeria Evidence Act of 2011 plays in forensic case procedure?
Very critical. So I was coming to that. Very critical, because a forensic accountant need not be a lawyer, but he must always work closely with lawyers, because the Evidence Act, the gentleman that asked the question referenced, guides us to know what is admissible, what is not admissible. So let me give you an example. That evidence, the Nigerian Evidence Act, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been privileged to have a lawyer be my boss for so many years, and I've have colleagues who are lawyers. I've supervised lawyers in my team, so I've worked a lot with lawyers. So I have some little bit of idea of what the law says in certain area. So, for example, the Evidence Act in Nigeria, you cannot present the bank statement of a private person as evidence in any forensic assignment if you don't have the consent of the person to obtain that bank statement. So bank statement is only admissible when the person who has the bank statement voluntarily gives you the bank statement, and there is evidence that he consented to you using it. Unlike the police, the EFCC, and the courts that have some kind of legal backing to go, demand for bank statement from the banks. If a forensic accountant gets the bank statement of someone, anyway, either he knows somebody in the bank or through the back door, the Evidence Act says that evidence is inadmissible. So you must be conversant with how the Evidence Act says evidence should be obtained. The Evidence Act specifies how digital evidence should be obtained, how physical evidence should be obtained, what is admissible, what is not admissible. So the Evidence Act plays a very key role in what is admissible and not admissible in the court of law. And so as a forensic accountant, you should work with lawyers. You should have lawyers as your friends, because they will help you. You can do a very good job and mess it up because you did not do the right thing. I just gave an example. Imagine you write your report and you say somebody has committed fraud. If you have a lawyer you are working with, that lawyer will immediately tell you, you can't write this in a report, please take it out. Because this statement will jeopardize the entire thing. So the Evidence Act is very key. It's something we need to be conversant with as we do our work. Thank you very much.
That is there for Fagbola all the way from Ibadan. And I believe other members have actually benefited for that, or the importance of the Evidence Act. You mentioned something when you were talking about this Evidence Act on digital thing, and that is taking my attention to the next question. We are conversant that everything is being digitalized these days, and we know that financial crime are perpetrated these days electronically via various digital platforms. As a forensic expert, what level or digital skills will you require to remain efficient on the job, knowing the current trend that we have now?
Okay, that's a very key question. No one should be ignorant about digital aspect of the work. No one should be ignorant. Now, but that doesn't mean that we all must be expert. There is an aspect of forensic called digital forensics. It's a whole new area on its own. It has to do with cyber. It has to do with e-discovery. It's a whole new world of its own. Now, that is not my specialty. But the good thing is that as a forensic accountant, you should be conversant with how to harness the benefit of that area, know what that area can get for you. So, for example, I know that if I get a laptop of someone who is under investigation, the e-discovery guys in digital forensic are able to bring out document the guy has deleted. They can bring out email he has deleted, emails he has sent years ago that he thinks are no longer. They can bring those things which can help in investigation. So every forensic accountant must have a basic knowledge of what is available and what is obtainable through digital, and then be able to tell the digital expert, this and these are the things that I need. I need this, I need this, I need that. Because the digital guys may not be investigators. They are just there for you to tell them what you want and they get it for you. So for example, I've worked in cases where they get the email. So as you are here, you know, it's scary, but I have to say it. So as you are here now, Mr. Kunwade, if ICAN wants to look into some of your activities, you can be here with your laptop, and then on the back end, the digital forensic guys can actually image your entire email and put it on a different laptop and then give it to the forensic accountant. And then he begins to look through all the mails you have deleted, all the mails that you have sent. Now, what the digital guys can do is to get that email and put it on a laptop. You, the forensic accountant, still need to apply your skill. You still need to know what you're looking for and how to look for it. So to answer your question, no forensic accountant should be ignorant of digital aspect of forensics. But though you should not be, you need not be an expert, or you must be able to harness the benefit of digital and then be able to work with the digital experts to do your work much more efficiently.
Having good knowledge of digital processes, and even if you are not an expert, it's very key and very fundamental. Paulinus Ikechukwu is asking this question. You know, why you are saying some of the things that a forensic accountant needs to do. He said you must apply natural justice. He's saying that applying the rule of natural justice by revealing the finding prematurely may jeopardize the whole exercise. This is because the person may quickly conceal the trail. What's your take on this?
So I'm happy the key word he used there is prematurely. So no forensic accountant, what he sought, would do that. So you should not reveal things prematurely. So let me give an example. You've looked through transaction and you've seen that a certain amount was taken by a particular person who need not do that, and then you've seen the trade that the money, for example, was paid into his account by transfer. You have all this evidence. You've looked at it from cradle to grave, and you've not been able to find an explanation why this happened. You already have your evidence of the money paid to him. You already have the evidence that there is no approval. So by the time you present it to him, there is nothing he can do unless there is an approval which is not on file. Again, which is why I said don't hide findings from people, because it is very possible that while the file does not contain the approval, he may have had an approval via email from the CEO. I agree it should be on file, but it's not on file, it's in his email. If you conceal it and say you have found something against this guy, he had no approval to do this, and you put it in your report, by the time you are presenting the report to the sponsor, whether the board or the chairman, and then the staff is called upon, and the staff said, the forensic accountant did not ask me about this. I have an approval. It's in my email, and he goes to print his email to show that maybe the CEO was on vacation when he was doing that expense, and the CEO sent email approval. Yes, he should have printed it and put on file. He dropped the ball on that, but that does not mean that he committed fraud. So which is why you should present adverse observation before people for them to respond. I agree with Mr. Paulinus. It must not be done prematurely. It should be done at the appropriate time when you have ticked on the box on your side.
Brilliant. And I want to believe Paulinus have actually picked that. Let's now talk about financial forensic expert standing in the witness box in the court of law. Since we are not trained lawyers, how difficult is it to give evidence in the courts in a criminal case, given by technicality, the technicalities involved in the legal environment and the antics of the legal professionals?
Okay, so it's a valid question. You need not be a lawyer to be able to do forensic accounting work and then be an expert witness that will give tenable evidence. Because you need not be a lawyer, but a big but, you must be abreast of legal requirements and work with lawyers. Work is very important for you to work with lawyers. As a matter of fact, you do not go to give evidence in court without having a private session with the lawyer inviting you. Usually, every lawyer would do this. There is a pre-trial dry run or so, where they would call the witnesses they want to call and say, okay, when I'm doing the examination in chief, in the court of law, the questioning to a particular witness is in three categories. You have the examination in chief, which is done by the particular lawyer that invited you. Then you have the cross-examination, which is done by the opposite lawyer. And then you have the re-examination done by the lawyer that invited you. So usually the lawyer that invited you will take you through a dry run of the question he wants to ask you. This is what I want to ask you as in the examination in chief. So you must have a session with lawyers before you go to court, and then be close to lawyers. You can't be a successful forensic accountant if you're not close to lawyers, because you will do fantastic investigation, but you will go say the wrong thing. I've been in court before, and I've seen how people mess up themselves in court, because one thing with the court of law is that when you enter that witness box, no matter how big or high profile you are, you become like the lawyers can toss you either way. Yes, the lawyers can just toss you everywhere. You can't say anything. You can't ask any question. It's only your lawyer that can defend you. So it is better you have a session with your lawyer, be conversant with certain things. Like somebody mentioned the Evidence Act now. Be conversant with some basic things you cannot do. For example, you don't go to court and say hearsay. Somebody told me that. Before you know, they will so harass you, you will feel embarrassed. So there are certain things that are guidelines you should say, certain things you should not say. I cannot cover all of them in this session, but you need to be close to your lawyers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. For those that are just joining us, I've been guesting Richard Ebuetse, who have been doing justice to the forensic accountant, providing evidence in the court of law. And it's been a very insightful time. I'll proceed. Shago is coming with this question that our learned presenter, when you detect fraud, or you observe that fraud has taken place, how would this be indicated in the report?
So yes, I know this question is coming out because I said you cannot say somebody has committed fraud. So
yes,
in forensic investigation report, state the fact. Simple. Okay. One thing I learned from one of my bosses I worked with, a lawyer, he said you should write your report in a way that you call somebody a thief without saying he's a thief. In the course of the review, we found out that Mr. Richard collected 20 million naira from the company account. We found no evidence that he provided any services for this amount of money. He also could not explain what the money was meant for. As of the time of this report, he has not refunded the money back to the company's account. Full stop. You didn't call him a thief. You didn't say anything. But you have just stated that he took an amount of money from the company's account, which he was not entitled to take. He didn't provide any service, and he has not returned the money. This is fact. You don't need to say Mr. Richard committed fraud. No, you can't do that. State the fact of what you found, and then that fact alone suffices. And you can go to court and show the judge, this is the evidence that he collected the money. You bring the payment voucher, you bring the transfer to his account. And then we interviewed him to ask him whether he has any reason why he took the money. He said, no, this is his statement he signed. You can present all this in a court of law, and then the judge will not pass the verdict to say, based on this, Mr. A, you defrauded your company, or you should not be the one to say it.
Don't be the one to say that he has committed a fraud, but put the words, talk to the learned people to tell you the languages to use, that you definitely indict the person without calling him a thief. It's been a very interactive session. And Mr. Richard, I can tell you that my audience are actually praising you to say, well, I don't know whether you're a lawyer today or you are an accountant like me, but you've been doing justice. Let me pick this up. What certification do you think one needs to really be a forensic accountant? That will be one arm of the question. And let me ask the second leg, that looking at these forensic services and the importance of a legal process, don't you think that we need collaboration? I mean, our institute and MBA?
Yes, yes. So you talked about certification somebody would need. So like I mentioned initially, I'm happy that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, they have a forensic accountant certification program, of which I'm one of the facilitators. And I saw one or two of my students make some comments here. Some of them I trained in 2012, 2013. Some of them I don't even know them. They see me in the airport and they say, hey, you trained me 2013 in ICAN. So ICAN has a certification, a program for forensic accountants. Go there, be a part of it, and you will see experts coming to train you. If you can also add the ACFE of the USA, which I also have, and then be a certified fraud examiner, but you need to be certified. ICAN is at your doorstep, it's at your fingertip. Go through the process and be certified. Talking about the collaboration, yes, and I think ICAN is already doing something in that direction, but maybe on an individual basis, and I will explain. The forensic accountant certification program ICAN does, there are courses on law and evidence. ICAN brings in lawyers who have been called to the Nigerian bar to teach that. Those aspects are not taught by accountants. They are taught by professors of law, professional lawyers who are called to the Nigerian bar. So in a way, ICAN is already collaborating with the MBA, but on a greater scale, they can do it at an institute level where the MBA and ICAN come together, come up with a framework on how they can collaborate and make the forensic accountant to be much more skilled, especially when it comes to giving evidence in court and then bringing output that are much more admissible. I can tell you that if that collaboration is taken to the level of institute versus institute, it will turn out much more quality forensic accountants. The MBA will be the better for it. ICAN will be the better for it. And I can tell you it is not impossible that one or two other accounting bodies may hear this and run with it. So, but I think ICAN, that have already started something in this regard, has a foot in the door already. They can harness it and then make it much more productive for the institute.
Yeah, collaboration is the way to go. If you must have it much more better and robust. We are gradually winding up, but I need to bring this up because we are in the election season. I would have said we should carry out forensic maybe audit on the Valentine Day. But I won't want to bore you with that because I want you to be fair and be unbiased. But before I pick my question on politics, I think Paulinus is coming with another question. He said, I want to ask regarding the chain of custody of evidence. Your reports may be excellent, but the way you handle the evidence may mess up the entire report. Can you give some clue on how to handle evidence?
Okay, so Paulinus is actually speaking like a forensic accountant. So he's very correct. You can write an excellent report, but mess up the evidence. So let me give an example. There's something called the chain of custody. Chain of custody means if I obtain, let's say, a check stub that shows that check was collected and then cashed by someone, that document is going to be presented as evidence in court. The moment I collect that evidence from the financial controller or the accountant, I open what is called a chain of custody. On so and so date, check number so and so received from the accountant. The accountant will sign, and then I take it from him. If anyone wants to have a look at that document, the person would need to write his name, write his date. He collected this check on so and so time. And when the person returns it, he needs to write the time he returns it. From when you obtain the evidence up to when you present it in court, there must be a documented chain of custody of that document, which is why it is always advisable when you get original document, make photocopy to work with, file the original in a very secure place so that you don't have to be taking it out and be marking it how it goes out and comes in. But suffice to say that there must be a trail of how the document has moved from one hand to the other before it arrives in court. And then electronic evidence, there are also ways to obtain electronic evidence. It's a very technical area. So if you come to obtain evidence in somebody's laptop, if somebody is suspected of committing fraud, and then the person is accosted to say, please give us your laptop, you do not shut down the laptop. Because if you shut down the laptop, the data on that laptop as of when you came to take it from the person will change. When laptop is shut down, the data is no longer the same. So there are ways to obtain digital evidence. You take the laptop and then you unplug it and remove the battery immediately. It freezes everything on the hard drive until it is imaged and extracted. Again, this is a different specialized area. So Paulinus is correct. If you do not obtain it very well, you can jeopardize your case.
So back to my question, looking that we are in the election period, and you know the strategic role that accountant, not now talking of forensic accountant that will play. Assuming we have the umpire, I mean INEC, and the major aspirants watching this program, of which some of their aides does at times, what would be your suggestion to them on the efforts to strengthen the electoral process and the forensic service in Nigeria?
This is a very good question. So it's a good thing that INEC embraced electronic means of transmitting, voters' data and things like that. Again, I'm not here to spread fear or put fear in people's mind, but if you have an idea of digital, anybody who is an expert in digital will tell you anything that is online can be tampered with. Once something is online, it can be tampered with. It doesn't mean it has been tampered with, but it can be tampered with. And we all know the story of the American general election, the last one, where it was being rumored that a certain country, which I don't want to mention, had hacked into the database and tampered with the vote and things like that. So what I would say to the umpire is make sure integrity checks are carried regularly. The digital forensic guys have a way of conducting, integrity checks on data and then digital systems. So, for example, is the system, I believe ICAN would have such a thing in place, even though they may not announce it. There is need to check that the system, the data integrity is still in place, and then data transmitted are untainted and they are still pure. So INEC needs to be sure that a system is audited by forensic, digital guys. That one needs to be there to ensure integrity of the data. I wouldn't go more than that so that I don't, put doubt in people's mind. But I believe ICAN would have those things. INEC would have those things in place to be sure that such a thing works. And then for the aspirant, what I would say is this: as a country, we need to create a framework of independent forensic audit and review of government activities. I do not see the participation of forensic accountant in key government activities. So I will give an example. People normally laugh when I say this. We've all heard news item of XYZ state unmask 10,000 ghost workers, and we all clap. I humorously say, since I was born, I've never seen a ghost work. Ghosts don't work. Using that term, ghost workers, is trying to deflect our attention. There is no ghost working anywhere. You only have payroll fraud. And if you check, each time such news items are released, we do not hear the name of the person who has been committing that fraud, because our minds are blinded by that word, ghost workers. But if a forensic accountant is brought in, a forensic accountant will know that ghost worker simply means one person has been collecting the salary of 5,000 people for the past 2 years. And then he follows through to get to the identity of such a person. So what I would say to office holders is, let them develop a framework that would require the independent involvement. I use that word independent because the moment you bring the forensic accountant in-house, they get compromised. The independent involvement of forensic accountant in key government activities like payroll, like project, like bidding, like contracts. This will give much more probity to the system. So that's it.
Sincerely speaking, it's been a very wonderful time. But in 1 minute, let me pick Shuaibu's question, who is saying, to what extent does data protection regulation affect forensic investigation? In 1 minute, because of our time.
In all aspects, every forensic accountant must be mindful of data privacy. So data privacy covers the collection of data, retention of data, and transmission of data. You must be sure that as you keep data, as you send data, as you retain data, you do not breach data privacy rule. So you must be cognizant of what it requires, how long you can keep data, what is personal and private data, what you cannot keep. And like I always say, consult with the legal guys in this area. so that you are not found on the wrong side of the law.
And in closing, Mr. Richard, who has taken us to class, I think the next course I need to take now will be in forensic accounting so that I can stand as witness. In closing, let me bring this up that your institute, my institute, ICAN, is always open to ideas that will positively advance the growth of our members, the accounting profession, and the Nigerian business environment. What would be your advice or suggestion to the Institute on Forensic Services Skills Development?
Okay, so my advice to the Institute, which I'm a part of, and I'm proud to be a part of the Institute, we need to stay closer to the government. And this is not just on forensic services, it's generally. ICAN is a foremost professional accounting body for Nigeria and West Africa and globally. But somehow we seem not to be close enough to the government. We're close, but we can do better. Because things in government, in this country, for example, government expenditure covers a huge part of our GDP. We need to be close to government to be able to show them how to do things. We all know that there is threat that some other accounting bodies may want to have a foot in the door, but these are not things that we should be discussing because they don't compete with us or anything. We should get closer to those in government, show them how they can do things better, collaborate with them, and then possibly bring them out of the woods. So my advice to ICAN is that we are close to government. Let's get closer. Let's be the one running the show. Let's be the one telling the government, this is how to do this. This is who should be in this office. This is how to go here, and this is how to prevent this. I believe the more the collaboration, the better for the country and the better for the institute. Thank you very much.
That's a brilliant way to bring the show to a close. Having Mr. Richard Ebuetse, who has been my guest today discussing forensic accountant. It's been a wonderful time. And I want to believe when there's to put a call through to you, you will definitely honor your institute by giving more insight on the development around forensic accounting. It's been a great time, and let me especially appreciate all our audience who are connected globally. But before I cut the show off today, let me quickly make this announcement that the 21st conferment of fellowship ceremony, the registration is on, and this will be coming up come September 1st, 2023 at the Landmark Center at Victoria Island. We want you all to start registering now. The portal is open. Follow the process that has actually been stipulated for the registration of the highest seat, which is the fellowship of our great institute. I'm sure those of you who are ACA, you can join the club of the big league, playing in the big league, and you can put at the back of your name, FCA. Anywhere you go and they hear FCA, they must look back because you are no longer playing the lower league, but in the upper league. And also, it is very important that you fulfill your obligation to the institute by paying your annual subscription. As at when due, I'm sure you know there are benefits attached to this if you are able to pay on time, most especially between the first day of the year till 30th of March. For the associate, it is 17,500, and to the fellow, it is 32,500. Hurry, make use of all the channel. There is no excuse that there is no cash. All the electronic channel is working for our great institute. Until I come your way again on Thursday, please stay cool. Enjoy today. We are just starting. Valentine is in the air. Until I come your way again on Thursday, I remain your host, Olusegun Okwade, FCA. Stay tuned and bye for now.